So today we're going to dive into the indie fantasy film Once Upon a Princess, a story that takes a classic fairy tale and pretty much flips the script. It really makes you question everything you thought you knew about what it means to be royal.
And really, this whole movie boils down to one central question. What truly makes someone a princess? Is it just your bloodline, the way you act, or maybe it's something else entirely? In this explainer, we're going to unpack how the story tries to find that answer.
Okay, so our story kicks off in France with our hero, Princess Agnes. Her life is, pretty stable, maybe even a little quiet, but she has no idea that the peaceful world she knows is about to go up in flames. So who is Agnes? Well, she's technically a princess from Bohemia, but she's been raised her whole life in France. She was adopted by accounts and has been looked after by her nanny, Janet. Everyone knows her as this gentle, noble person, but she's completely unaware that her whole world is about to be turned upside down. And then chaos, a violent revolution just storms the chateau. In one single terrifying night of fire and fury, Agnes's guardian is killed, and her peaceful life is just gone. This isn't just some small problem, it's the event that launches her into a future she never saw coming. Her nanny, Janet, basically shoves her out the door with nothing but an address in a place called Bohemia and tells her, "You must be strong." Absolutely terrified and completely alone, Agnes has to flee, leaving behind the only life she's ever known for a country she doesn't even remember. So after this incredibly long and dangerous trip, Agnes finally makes it to the address her nanny gave her, a chateau in Bohemia. She's hoping to find safety, but what she finds instead is a brand new world that is nothing like the France she just escaped. And wow, the culture shock hits her like a ton of bricks. Back in France, she saw actual rebellions over things like equality. Here in Bohemia, they joke that the family recipes are like laws. Even the food is a big deal. Roasting a cauliflower is seen as some weird French thing, while boiling it is just how it's done. All right, so once she's inside this chateau, Agnes has to figure out this whole new social scene. It doesn't take long for her to become the center of attention, which brings her both a lot of affection and a whole lot of suspicion.
And there are really three key people she has to deal with. First, you've got Prince Miroslav, who is just immediately smitten. He thinks she's perfect. But his mother, the very intimidating countess, is not so sure. She's convinced this stranger is a fraud. Luckily for Agnes, she does find some friends among the servants.
Yeah, and this quote right here, this is the heart of the whole problem. Miroslav says he's in love, but his mother immediately points out the huge issue. They have zero proof that she's actually royalty. And in their world, love is great and all, but your family line is everything. So the Countess, she's had enough. She decides she's going to settle this whole thing once and for all. She comes up with this ancient, totally bizarre, and apparently legally binding test to prove whether or not Agnes is a true princess. And she goes for the classic, almost ridiculous Princess and the Pea test. The rules are super specific. You take one single raw pea and stick it under a mattress. The whole idea is that a real royal is so naturally sensitive that even that tiny little bump will make it impossible for them to get any sleep. And we're not talking, 2 or 3 mattresses. They pile on more than 20 of them. It's this insanely tall stack. I mean, this is a test that is designed for her to fail, to prove she's a fraud. But what happens the next morning? Agnes comes downstairs and she is just a wreck. She says she barely slept at all and complains that she feels black and blue all over. She passed. She actually passed the impossible test. Her incredible sensitivity has just proven her royal nature to the entire court. Okay, so her royal sensitivity is proven. But for Miroslav, that's not quite enough. He's more determined than ever to find the paperwork, the historical documents that will officially, finally prove the identity of the woman he wants to marry. So the prince, he dives straight into the family archives. He's thinking if she's really from around here, there has to be some kind of paper trail, right? Her family has to be in these old books somewhere, and he is going to find that proof. And you know what? He finds it. He starts tracing her family tree all the way back, great-grandparents, parents, and then he finds the last, most important piece of the puzzle. Her grandmother's name was Countess Jeanette. And that's it. That's the moment the light bulb goes off for Agnes. That formal name from the archives, Jeanette, is just a different version of her own nanny's name, Janet. The woman who raised her wasn't just some servant. She was her own grandmother, a countess. So there you have it. The proof is in the books, her lineage is solid, and that fairy tale ending is so close. Agnes is finally welcomed into the family. But hold on, the story has one more huge, emotional twist left. Right, because finding out who she was, that was only part of the puzzle. The real truth, the part that changes everything, isn't about Agnes's past. It's about her grandmother's sacrifice. It turns out, when they fled Bohemia, Countess Jeanette made this unbelievable sacrifice. She gave up her own title and chose to live as a servant just so she could stay by her granddaughter's side and make sure she was raised to be the lady she was always meant to be. And after all that, they finally get their happily ever after. Agnes marries her prince, they have a big family, and, of course, they honor her grandmother by naming their first daughter Jeanette. And that little P, it gets its own spot in a museum, a weird little symbol of how they found their way to happiness. Which brings us all the way back to that first big question we asked. The film seems to say that, sure, Agnes's bloodline made her a princess, but it was her grandmother's sacrifice that was the truly noble act. It leaves us all wondering, is royalty something you're born with, or is it something you earn through love and sacrifice?